So Ole Miss lost a basketball game last night. Final score, South Carolina 77, Ole Miss 74 in overtime. South Carolina hit a buzzer beater. 2 seconds on the clock, 94 feet from the basket. They threw it 45 feet in the air, caught, shoot, bango off the backboard, count the three, celebrate it. I don't even know why they reviewed it, but they did because it was close at the end. There was a second and a half left on the shot clock when the guy let it go.
Don't bury the lead. Even don't make it sound like a tip-in. The guy flung it from half court.
I just said it was a 45-foot shot.
Well, you started off with they hit a buzzer beater. Like, they hit a half court.
No, I was not downplaying the game-winning play. I was just downcoming that the score of the game is not really the story. The story is, like it or not, it's changed a little bit. I talked with Keith Carter, 3 weeks ago? We talked about basketball, and he pointed to injuries and some disappointment and the fact that basketball obviously has got to be better, but though he hears from fans some that he doesn't really subscribe to the idea that you make a quick change on a head coach because of a single bad season. And I think that's admirable. But there are some external factors that you have to look at. And this is not me advocating for or against Kermit Davis as the head coach. I just think there are a couple of things that are right there glaring with a spotlight on them that you have to talk about as it pertains to Ole Miss basketball. First of all, attendance is not the be-all, end-all. But it matters if people don't go to your games. I talked to, in full disclosure, I was not there last night. Didn't see it with my own eyes. Watched it on television, and it looked abysmal in terms of attendance. And I asked someone today, I was like, how many people were actually there? This was a guy that was at the game. Like 800, 900. He's like, no, it was way more than that. He's like, there were probably 1,500. Like, okay. Point stands. And the biggest concerning thing, I mean, the fact that people didn't drive up from Jackson or the coast or down from Memphis or over from Tupelo or wherever that make up a lot of the high dollar seats, that's to be expected. But Ole Miss basketball has always had kind of a local fan base as well, right? I mean, there's like kind of the Oxford community. They just go.
I mean, 2 years ago, a Tuesday night 6 o'clock game would have had 5 times the people that were there last night.
Yeah.
It would not have been full. There would have been visible empty seats, but there would have been a heck of a lot more than you saw last night.
The bigger concern in terms of attendance, I think, is the fact that there were like 100 students there. Or maybe 200. You wrap 3 sides of your building with courtside seats for students. And by the way, this is not an indictment on students.
No, they've done a great job there.
It's the first time since that building has been open for an SEC game where the student section wasn't basically full. Sometimes it's been that shoulder-to-shoulder, into it, crazy club red, I think that's what they call it. Like, great atmosphere. But basically for SEC games, it's 75% full. And certainly the sideline, baseline to baseline is full. That wasn't the case last night. Not even close.
The student section looked like it does when they're at Christmas break. People kind of scattered in there that buy $5 tickets and go sit down where the students are supposed to be. That's what it looked like.
So that's a piece of it. And then I don't know that I've ever openly questioned, regardless of who we're talking about, right? Ole Miss coaches, state coaches, Alabama coaches. I recognize that my level of understanding in their area of expertise is nowhere close. We're not even on the same planet. But I'm trying to understand what happened on Ole Miss's final possession of overtime. In a tie game, 74-74, you have the ball in the hands of Jarkel Joyner, and that possession begins with what, 37 seconds left on the clock? Because there was a 2-second differential, as we soon found out, between the shot clock and the game clock. So Ole Miss gets it into the front court in a tie game with the ball in Jarkel Joyner's hands. And they got to overtime by Jarkel Joyner driving in and making a difficult layup. We've already established that there was nobody in the building, so clearly coaching staff could communicate with Jarkel Joyner had there been an interest. Ole Miss didn't run a play. There was no set. The only action in that entire possession was when Nasir Brooks, with like 8 seconds left on the game clock, which meant 6 seconds left on the shot clock, comes up and sets a single ball screen with two guys there to get Jarkel Joyner a little bit open, and he goes ball fake, pull it down, get the defender in the air, try to draw a foul on an off-balance deep three. Why? Like, there's no part of me that understands why that is what you go with to try to win a tie game in overtime. On multiple levels, right? One, you drive into the lane. Maybe you've got a more high percentage shot. Defender doesn't close out on you. Jarkel Joyner, really good mid-range shooter. Pull up just inside the free throw line, 14-footer, bang. Maybe you're able to get deeper into the lane and you're able to get another tough shot layup. Maybe you draw a foul. More likely to get fouled driving into the lane, putting up a layup than it is shooting a 27-foot three with a second and a half left on the shot clock. Ultimately, it's an air ball. They don't call the foul because there wasn't a foul. The guy jumped sideways and there was a little bit of bump. It would have been a terrible call if they had called the foul there. It's an air ball. They go to the monitor. They end up putting time back on the clock. South Carolina's got 2 seconds, and they hit a half-court game winner.
Well, the inbounder was not being guarded, by the way, which has been a point of contention today.
Yeah, I thought about that, and I mean, I don't know. There's some people that think you always guard the inbounder. Don't give him an unobstructed quarterback throw. I mean, he threw a line drive to center court, got caught it, turned, and banked it. You know, if you've got somebody guarding that, does he have the clear shot to a player at half court? I don't know. I'm probably guarding the inbound there. Some would argue, no, you don't want to guard the inbound there. Whatever. I don't understand how anybody looks at that end-of-game situation, though. Did the outcome really matter? Ole Miss is 3-9 in the league. But you had a chance to win an SEC game on your home floor. And wins are hard. So why don't you give your team the best chance to win in that city? That makes no sense to me. And so I do think, I think Kermit Davis is a really good basketball tactician. And his peers think that as well. And people that cover the sport who have watched him coach believe that. But I'm not sure 2 years running we've seen an ability for Kermit Davis to connect on any level with his players. I think they're playing hard, so I guess they're connecting at some level. But there's something amiss there. And I thought that play at the end of the game just kind of encapsulated what are you doing? What's going on? He says, I really like Kermit, and he and his dad are both family friends. That being said, he's got to go. He loudly told Ty Fagan to sit the bleep down twice. And it happened in a building with nobody in it in a timeout after a busted play. It was a terrible pass, trying to break the press, lazy pass, just kind of – he's not a point guard.
That kind of stuff gets magnetized when you're losing. And it's really that simple. I mean, 2 years ago, while some people were like, he kind of acts kind of crazy on the sideline. What's up with that? But they're winning, so nobody cares. Yeah. Or at least there was a lot of fan capital. A lot of people coach hard. In my youth sports days, I got coached hard. Frank Martin on the other sideline last night, very hard coach. Uses some language. If you're within shouting distance of Frank Martin, you could hear him. So that's a thing. The issue is when you lose, this kind of stuff gets magnetized. When you have clearly...
And Borky, parenthetically, I just feel like I need to put this in as part of the conversation. Frank Martin and Kermit Davis are two of my favorite people in college basketball. I've talked before about how much I admire and respect Frank Martin and the fact that kind of who he is on the sideline, that's not really who he is. And Kermit Davis is one of the most outstanding and generous people I've ever been around. And happy to, I mean, not like friends and like we text all the time, but friendly, acquaintances, live in the same town, bump into each other, like seeing each other. It's always been kind about doing interviews. So I feel like I need to put that out there, which makes kind of some of this even harder to say.
It does. But for the fans sitting in the arena and they see a bad basketball team, because let's be honest, I know they have injuries. I get it. Ole Miss wasn't good before the injuries. They weren't.
Very okay.
Regardless of what is said in the postgame, that was not a surefire NCAA tournament team before the injuries. They lost to Samford at home. They lost to Boise State. They got smoked by Western Kentucky. This was not a good basketball team at any point this season. Would they have been better than they are now without the injuries? 100%. Were they going to be currently right now sitting on the right side of the bubble with a few weeks to go? No shot. But when you're a fan sitting in the stands, but when you're a fan sitting in the stands and you watch a bad basketball team play where a player who you brought in from the transfer portal, with all due respect to the young man, not a high-level player at his previous stop, does the exact things at the new stop that he did at the old stop, and that turns into what people witnessed last night, you're going to get fans wondering, what are we doing? When you're losing, that kind of stuff does not play with people because it's a bad product, and then that stuff paired with the bad product is I had a couple friends at the game last night, and they were texting me, this is the first time I really thought that he wasn't in control. Talking about emotions, like demeanor. And that's directly because the team is losing. If the team won last night and he was acting like that, nobody would have said anything. So that's part of it. But still, when you've got that going on, it gets magnified when you're losing, especially in empty gyms where words echo pretty good.
So as the outsider, I'll just ask. This is year 4. They were really good year 1 with a team full of some other guys' players. They've gotten worse every year. This isn't a team where you look at it and you go, next year, okay, we got a great young nucleus that coach has recruited, and we're ready to really take off next year. Nothing about this team makes me look at them and go, okay, next year they're going to be really good. Why are you waiting? It's going to happen next year.
The only thing that I'll disagree with you on is I don't like the line of, well, he won with the previous guy's players.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the previous guy got out because he wasn't winning with those players, and so the new guy's got to get credit for winning.
Right.
Andy Kennedy wasn't winning with those players. They were talented.
You give credit for winning, but because sometimes you just need a new voice. But then you've got to keep recruiting. You've got to bring more players in, and that has not happened.
Evaluations
Les Miles gets credit for the national championship that he won with the players that Nick Saban recruited to LSU. I've never thought that was a fair, well, he did it with somebody else's players.
Right.
But that's the rest of what you say is accurate, though, right? The year 1 NCAA tournament. Year 2, the season gets shut down. but was not going to be an NCAA tournament team. Year 3, number 1 seed in the NIT, and you get bounced in the first round or second round. I guess it was second round. Think. Maybe I don't have that right.
First round of the NIT. Yeah, first round.
And now in year 4, you're sitting there at 3-9? Is it 3-9 or 3-10? Doesn't matter. 3 and something in conference play.
But that is a fair question, though. We asked it before the game. Are you just delaying the inevitable? I think that's a fair question. But what would concern me if I was Keith Carter is, I mean, at the end of the day, crowd size. What do you think's going to show up on Saturday while baseball's going on? And by the way, again, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, and this isn't a Kermit Davis issue. This is college sports in general. But when people say, well, they get Matt Morrell back and Deshaun Ruffin's back and Brakefield has to return, even though he hasn't produced the way you expected a Duke transfer to produce. Are you sure? Again, that's not they're going to leave Kermit. This is college basketball now. This is college sports. I promise you, there are players in Ole Miss's roster right now that are being recruited by other schools. I promise you that is happening. Guarantee it. The good ones anyway. So when you say, you got to keep a coach because that's the only way the players are staying, that's not the landscape of the sport anymore. Your guys are not, you have to re-recruit your own roster every year. Lane Kiffin, after year 1, had to re-recruit some of his own players. And the program was fun and exciting and new and everything was great. And he had to recruit his own players to stay after year 1. I'm sure Mike Leach has had to do the same thing. This is college sports now. So if you're saying, well, they'll be good next year because these guys will be back, there's no guarantee of that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to diagnose what's happening on the floor, it's been the same thing all season long. Ole Miss is not a very good shooting basketball team. And you can talk about defense and rebounding and all of those things, but the bottom line is if you want to win in college basketball, you got to make shots. And Ole Miss is not a very good shooting basketball team. Overall or from 3. Just kind of, I mean, in SEC games only, 43% from the field, average. 34% from the field from 3, average. 71% from the line. Okay. But they're also minus 6 points per game in scoring margin. Basically shooting the same percentage from 3. Overall shooting percentage, about 5 percentage points better for the opponent. And injuries have played a role for this team. I mean, there's no denying that.
No doubt.
I mean, look, Robert Allen not being on the team, and look, I mean, Robert Allen's a Samford transfer. I mean, it's not like he came in from Duke and was a starter. But he was an important piece, especially on the defensive side, leadership, energy. Jarkel Joyner being out for an extended period of time, and a guy who was probably going to be on the SEC all-freshman team, Deshaun Ruffin, misses, plays in the first game of the year, misses 8 games, comes back, kind of gets his leg under him, playing really well, and then goes out for the rest of the year. So the injury piece of it is real. But everybody has to deal with injuries too. It's been a long time outside the last season since Ole Miss was uncompetitive in basketball. Have they been a perennial NCAA tournament team? Of course not. They've been basically a 500 team in league play for the last 15, 16 years. And they're 7 games below 500 in league play with 5 to go. I don't know what you do with it. I mean, I think it's an incredibly... Now, if you say predict, I'm going to go based on what Keith Carter told me 3 weeks ago, is that going to be some difficult conversations, but he fully expects Kermit Davis to be the basketball coach next year. I guess this is a year that you don't do the rollover extension. You talk about staff makeup and whether or not you got the right people in place. You talk about your approach in the transfer portal and how you're going to rebuild the roster and how you're going to get a competitive roster on the floor. You got to get some answers to those questions. It's not just, hey, you're going to have to do these things. You got to understand as an athletics director, how are you going to address these things in order to feel confident that you can